One of the great Unity authors, Eric Butterworth. I got that butter in that poem, and I got Butterworth, Eric Butterworth. And I know that as well as I know my own name almost, I think. Anyway, Eric Butterworth tells a story that has to do with vision. It's in a little bit of a strange way, and we'll develop that as I go along. But here's the story. It's set decades back when a very poor woman who was dreaming for abundance decided that if she could just save and scrimp enough, she would be able to get passage from Europe, where she lived in poverty, to America, where she might be able to experience that dream of abundance. And so she did scrimp and save for years, and finally was able to get to the point where she could buy that passage. She could buy the ticket, but not much more. So when she came to the point of disembarking, she carried with her a little basket with a little bit of fruit and a few pieces of bread. She went to her cabin and secluded herself there for the entire voyage across the Atlantic. She ate meagerly, trying to extend that bread and fruit for as long as she could. But she was still in poverty consciousness, because when she landed in America, she found out that her ticket was included in that ticket was meals that were sumptuous, more than she could want to eat, abundance, the abundance she was dreaming about, but her consciousness was still in poverty. I think that's true for us in so many ways. And so today, it appears that which we dream about, it is that, I'm going to define that. It is kind of a tough term. It is that situation or that circumstance that needs a solution. So that solution is the it. That solution arrives when we see it rightly. So we're going to be talking about circumstances. Circumstances are things like, well, that's my lot in life. It's my circumstance. Or, I need this, but I suppose I might not deserve it. I might not get it. Or I have a dream. Oh, but it'll never come to pass. It's just a pipe dream, as they used to say. Do you know where that comes from? A pipe dream is a dream from a hallucinatory state when you're in the opium den smoking opium. Well, that comes from a long time ago. But pipe dreams, something that sort of seems grand, but never is going to occur in reality. So those circumstances were like that. My lot in life. Something I need, but I'm never going to get. A dream that's just a dream. But it isn't so. The truth is not that. And I'd like to develop today the ability for us to see it rightly, to set ourselves right, and to take the next right steps. I'm using that term right a lot. To see it rightly, to set yourself right, and then to take the next right step. Let's talk about seeing it rightly first. Of course, that it is the solution to the circumstance, and you look in your life and you look for whatever circumstance it is that challenges you. Doesn't matter what it is. Yours is not that unique. Well, maybe in the details. But in terms of it being a situation or a circumstance that you can't seem to resolve, something that seems almost impossible, well, it's not. That's the good news. So it is that circumstance. In order to see it rightly, we have to see it differently. Of course, in Miracles says that I see differently. Claudette, you know that. What's the rest of that lesson? I am determined to see it differently. Thank you, Claudette.
It's today's lesson.
No, I did not. It is today's lesson. Well, how appropriate. I am determined to see it differently. Well, in the past, when we've looked at it from a perspective of, I hope God will help me get this that I need. I hope God will provide the solution, which I don't think has a whole lot of veracity. Matter of fact, pretty much none at all. I see it differently, and we'll develop that as we go on. The Psalm 121 says, instead of just seeing it like we normally do, I will lift up my eyes unto the hill, from whence cometh my help. Now, the beautiful poem that Donna read talked about seeing things physically. And even in that context, we can see things differently. We can see something anew. We can see something fresh. But when the psalm says, I lift up my eyes to the hill or the mountain, that's where my help comes from. I'm not talking about physical seeing. Not talking about bowing in prayer and looking up to God and hoping and wishing and praying that God is going to grant you whatever you request us. It's not it. Charles Fillmore did a lot of work on that. And here's how he would define that metaphysically. He would say, I will lift up my eyes to that high place of spiritual understanding. For it is from this high consciousness that my help comes. My power and ability to overcome limitation, to rise triumphantly over every adverse condition and situation. That puts a little different light on it, doesn't it? We're not looking out there for help. We're looking to a high level of spiritual understanding. If you would, we're looking for the elevation of our consciousness because we know that Spirit is within us. So we look to that. And I like to think that we're talking about eyes of the heart. Not physical eyes, not even eyes of the mind, but eyes of the heart. That place within us that is our very core, that place that is our soul. So when we lift up our eyes to that level of spiritual understanding, we're really looking inward. We're looking inward to the Christ within. So when we look to see things rightly, we drop down from our mind and from the vision that we have out there with our physical eyes into the space of the heart. And it is from there that we look up to see things differently, to see a higher level of spiritual understanding, and it's there for you. It's built in. Spiritual understanding is a gift that we all have. We just have to be looking to it. We have to be seeing things rightly. I'm going to put the how do I do that right here now with each thing each point that I make. How do I do that? See with eyes of the heart. See things that you would not otherwise see because you're distracted by what's in your physical world. You're distracted by what your mind is focusing on. You don't look with the heart, which is getting right to the very core of the truth that, well, God is all. Source is everything, provides everything that we need, and we also are divine. We also have that divine nature in addition to our human nature, and that resource is there. So when we come from that place, changes that situation, that we want to see resolved, because we see it rightly. Oh, that takes time in quiet, takes time in contemplation, takes time to listen. But that's how you do it. It's interesting that we, in our modern society, have so many resources to get to know what is real or true or factual or historical. But you know what? Within, hard though it may sometimes be to believe, is a knowing that supersedes all of that other knowing. It's a direct knowing from the heart. And we've experienced that a little bit from time to time, but it's always available. It will appear, that solution to your situation, when you see it rightly, when you see it with the eyes of the heart. Now, the temptation to go from there is, or maybe even to go before you ever get there, is to set things right. That's just not right, you say. That's just not right. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to tell them how it is. I'm going to work myself, my fingers to the bone, so I can set it right. That's not the next step. The next step is to set yourself right. Because as you probably know, you're wise. You all have some wisdom. You don't really have control often over the situation as you see it. You don't have control over another person and their actions, but you do have control of yourself. You do have control of that human/divine nature that's within. You can make choices there. And when you do, you will see things rightly. You will see things differently. So setting yourself right is the place. Again, we go back to that idea of seeing with eyes of the heart. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, or I think it's something like that. Anybody know who that is? Ha ha! I see a couple of hands. Wrote The Little Prince, a favorite book. Here's what he says. It's only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. So our task in setting ourselves right is to change our perspective, our whole framework. For when we have that different framework, when we're looking for what is essential, not with physical eyes, but with the eyes of the heart, we've made a huge shift. And it hugely affects what happens in our life. As a matter of fact, it creates what happens in our life. So we choose to elevate our perspective. We do this. Boy, growing up, I used to battle with this and was kind of taught that it wasn't very good. We do this with our intuition. That's the direct knowing. the Christ within us, the divine within us, that is a very part of our nature, that divine speaks. And we know it on the outside as intuition. So I tell you, don't depend on the books so much. Good. But depend on the divine speaking from within, that intuition. And it's there. If you do that, you'll look differently on that situation. You'll see that you have a responsibility. You'll take responsibility for your response to that situation, whatever it is. You may stop blaming somebody else for it. You'll be in a different place because you'll be setting yourself right. You'll realize that you are an extension of source energy. Something that Abraham, if anyone's studied the teachers of Abraham as Esther Hicks has channeled them, you are an extension of source energy. And as that extension, you have a totally different orientation. When you look at something that you don't want in your life, it points to what you do want, what you do desire. And you put your energy there, you put your attention there, and again, it's a whole different framework. With your attention on that which you desire, your attention on that which you know is yours to seek, is available to you. So it's not you making things happen, setting it right, but setting yourself right. Abraham says this: it's not your job to make something happen. Universal forces are in place for all of that. Your work is simply to determine what you want. Position yourself to be in, as it were, a divine flow. If you can picture a river of divine flow. If you're way up on the bank, you're looking another way, you're not going to experience that divine flow. If you tip your toe in the water, you're not going to experience the divine flow very much. But if you just allow yourself to be flooded with the flow of divine energy, and you do that on a continual and a regular basis, you'll be looking differently, and you'll be setting yourself right in advance for bringing and drawing to yourself that which you desire, in addition to taking care of those needs that haven't been met, in addition to all that it is yours to receive in this world. And the gifts are limitless. So this setting yourself right doesn't look to the past, doesn't look to the future, but to the present moment. And when we give our careful, loving attention to this moment, here and now, with openness of heart, with the eyes of the heart open, we will have set ourselves right. We will have positioned ourselves to be the change in the world that we wish to see. And that brings us on to of course, that's a quote from Gandhi: be the change in the world that you wish to see. That brings us to the last part. Taking the step. The next right step. Remember that direct knowing allows us to know who we truly are, but it also gives us great sense of guidance. And you've all experienced it. Something comes to you all of a sudden as you wake from sleep in the middle of nowhere, an epiphany, a eureka moment. Aha. Pay attention to that. It's that spirit within you speaking softly, so you have to listen carefully, saying, this is next. And I emphasize next because that situation that you're remedying, that one that has a resolution, is a matter of steps. So you don't think of the whole thing and try to figure out all of the steps. That's wonderful planning. It won't go that way. So you look for the next step. Like Martin Luther King had to say, you don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step. So we look to take that next right step. Yesterday, as always on Saturday at 4 in the afternoon, online we have what we call Saturday Soul Boost. And there were, I think, 6 of us gathered yesterday. And I asked the question, it's a situation of dialogue. I asked the question of each of them there. So, how do you know what the next step is? How do you get beyond the seeing rightly and setting yourself right, but get down to the, as the 5th principle in Unity says, taking the truth that you've come to know and putting it into action? And here's some of the things. I'm going to share you the wisdom of Saturday Soul Boost. Of course, one of them was what I've already mentioned, one step at a time. A simple one. Listen. Listen, not for the audible things that will enter through your ear, but listen within, an inner listening. And you know what? That next step will be apparent if you listen. Another suggestion, sit with it for a while. Oh, we want the answer so quickly and so immediately. Sit with it a while. Wait on understanding. As the Christian scripture says, the peace, oh, what was that, the Hebrew scripture? I don't know, the peace that passes all understanding. But you don't get that instantly. Sit with it a while. Divine understanding, that gift that we all have, is waiting within as we sit and wait on it. Another step that someone says, and particularly this relates to maybe a difference that you have with someone else, maybe a disagreement, maybe even a long-term resentment. And that is, put yourself in the other person's shoes. If you're being kind of snotty to me or nasty to me, I might first be well to ask the question, what may you be experiencing that if I were in your shoes, I would be grappling with? This is part of our oneness, to realize that we're all human, we're all divine, we all make mistakes. And we all have the opportunity to discern spirit and the next step. So let's accord that to everyone else. Kind of sit back and say, what would I do if I were in their shoes? And then looking always, this is part of that determination to see differently, looking always for a better way. Not resigned to things as they always have been, but looking for a better way. And that better way, I might suggest, is most likely to become a parent. Remember, we're talking about something appearing. It's almost like that solution is veiled off from you, and then suddenly the mist of the veil begins to break, and you begin able to see, to appear that See what it is that you desire. It appears for it. So a parent may be a better way. And as that better way comes to you through direct knowing, through that intuition, you're able to take that next step, and then the next step, and then the next step. But don't hurry. There's no time frame. As well, there's being no temperature in spirit, there's no time in spirit. It will happen. It will come to you in perfect timing. So what we're doing when we see it rightly, when we set ourselves right and we take the next step, is we're changing our consciousness. Whatever your consciousness may be, perhaps you have somewhat of a consciousness of lack, like our passenger who came across on that ship to experience abundance in America, a consciousness of lack. May it be you have a consciousness of dissension with other people in your life. Maybe that you have a consciousness of being injured, being sick, being fractured. And if that's your consciousness, that's what you're going to get, probably, more of it. So, see it rightly. Change that consciousness by setting yourself right. And by, at the impetus of spirit, taking the next step. See it rightly. Set yourself right. Take the next right step. And so it is.